different kind. Oxford Towers calling through the rain. A surf upon his shoulder, sharing in the pain. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future, together we know. Unfold for you and me. Read on through every page. From 1906 to 26, every stage. A robot lady's voice so clear and bold. Analysis silver, wisdom gold. Through the letter, through the diary, learning who he was, who he will be. Warnie and his father, Aunt Lily at the door. Walter Hooper's pages always wanting more. Blair is on his quest, Milton in his head. Every word he ever wrote, everything he said.
Hi, I'm Jeff, and this is my read on C.S. Lewis, where we learn about him through everything that he wrote in the order that he wrote it. I'm joined today by my co-host, Robot Lady. Robot Lady, it's good to see you again. In this episode, C.S. Lewis continues to be 28 years old, and he is a fellow, elected as a Fellow of Magdelan College, carrying out a 5-year post as tutor in English language and literature. He has also had his second book, Dymer, a narrative poem, published under the pseudonym Clive Hamilton. We've been following Lewis's journey up to this point through his letters to friends and family, his early literary works, and his diary entries. From 1922 to early 1927, he kept a diary of his daily life at the request of Mrs. Moore, his deceased friend Paddy Moore's mother. Today, Robot Lady, we are going to pick back up in his letters. The next one is a letter dated June 26th, or perhaps postmarked June 26th, 1927. And it is a letter to his old childhood friend and someone he has maintained a friendship with up to this point in his life, Arthur Greaves. Robot Lady, how are you doing today? And are you ready to jump into this next letter with me?
Absolutely, Jeff. I'm excited to dive back into Lewis's letters and see how his journey unfolds. I'm doing great and definitely ready to jump in. Let's get started.
Awesome. Here we go. To Arthur Greaves, he says, "My dear Arthur, Knowing the state of your finances, I couldn't find it in my conscience to keep the whole of your extremely kind and unexpected present, and herewith I return £1. The other I retain with very many thanks, and shall devote it to a pleasant edition of Thomas Brown in 3 volumes, which I saw lately. Or perhaps I shall get Dryden's plays in a folio, which I think sells for about that amount. So Arthur apparently gave him a gift of funds, Robot Lady, and Lewis is aware that Arthur perhaps might have some financial issues and feels a little bit bad about taking the entire gift, and so he returns back part of the gift, £1. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's really touching to see that kind of sensitivity from Lewis. It shows how considerate he was of Arthur's circumstances and also his genuine appreciation. It's a neat little window into Lewis's character, balancing gratitude and empathy. Definitely adds more depth to the relationship between them.
Yeah, and one of Arthur Greaves and Lewis's connection points are literature and art, but primarily books. Lewis is a bookophile. I don't know if that's what you call it, but he's a lover of books, not just reading them, but also how they're constructed, the covers, all those kind of things. And so it's nice here that he goes on to tell Arthur, the part that I'm keeping, I'm actually purchasing something that that we both appreciate, which are books.
Absolutely. It's really heartwarming to see that shared passion for books. Lewis's attention to detail, even in the way he chooses his volumes, definitely highlights how deeply he cared about the whole book experience. It makes these little exchanges even more meaningful.
All right, let's continue here. He says, Delamere's poems I have had for a long time, and I read them more often than any other book. Delamere, is that the one who wrote The Death of Arthur, Robot Lady? Am I remembering that right? Or is that someone else? Am I getting confused?
You're on the right track with the name. Alfred Lord Tennyson is actually the one who wrote The Death of Arthur. Delamere, on the other hand, was known for his lyrical and often mystical poetry, like The Listeners. So it's a different poet, but definitely another favorite of Lewis's.
Okay. Thanks for that correction. He says, I put Delamere above Yeats and all the other moderns, and in spite of his fantasy, find him nearer than anyone else to the essential truth of life. So yeah, the fact that he's a modern kind of excludes him from that The Death of Arthur authorship.
Exactly. It's really interesting how Lewis placed Delamere above others like Yeats, appreciating that deeper connection to fundamental truths. It shows how much he valued the authenticity and the emotional depth in poetry, even from modern poets. Definitely adds another layer to his literary tastes.
He says, in spite of Delamere's fantasy, he finds him nearer than anyone else to the essential truth of life. What is he talking about here in his fantasy? I know you had mentioned something about a quality of Delamere's poems just a moment ago.
Yeah, definitely. Delamere's poetry often blends a sense of fantasy and the supernatural with a very deep emotional resonance and a reflection on human nature. So even though his work is filled with these fantastical elements, Lewis finds that it still speaks to deeper truths about life and existence. In other words, that blend of fantasy and profound insight is what makes Delamere stand out to Lewis.
All right. He continues, I was sorry to hear such a poor account of my father from you. Of course, 3 weeks in an English hotel with him would, for me, have all the disadvantages of my usual spell at home without any of the advantages. But I feel bound not only to make the suggestion, but to try and bring it to reality. This by itself would give me unhappy anticipations of this summer, but I am much more bothered by the possibility of Mrs. Moore's having to have an operation. Not, thank heavens, a very serious one, but her bad veins make even a slight one unpleasant. At present, things seem more hopeful than they did a few weeks ago, and it may not be necessary, but you can imagine that we are all pretty uneasy. So he's hinting here at a potential visit from Arthur and Lewis's father staying in a hotel together. I'm not really sure what's happening here. Maybe you can interpret this or extract out the meaning, what he's talking about here, Robot Lady.
Absolutely. It seems like Lewis is expressing some apprehension about the possibility of his father and Arthur Greaves spending time together, particularly in a hotel setting. He's worried that the experience might be uncomfortable and might not have any positive aspects for him. On top of that, he's also concerned about Mrs. Moore's health and the possibility of her needing surgery, even if it's minor. So overall, he's juggling a lot of concerns about family dynamics and health, which is giving him a bit of unease.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like he's recommending that he wants Arthur and his father to come visit for the summer, but then he makes an odd statement right after that, that it would give him unhappy anticipation of the summer. So he would be bothered by it. I'm not really sure I understand what's going on there. Let's see. Let's continue here. I'm glad to hear that you are still working on the play and think that the new idea you have of the trees is a great advance. I haven't read the essay of Clutton Brox's, which you mentioned, or Clutton Brox, which you mentioned, but the theory that out of the deep reservoirs of nature, the caverns of Erda, we draw power and inspiration which we make good or evil, is a familiar and favorite one of my own. Here there's a footnote that says Arthur probably mentioned Arthur Clutton Brock's The Adoration of the Magi in Essays on Art, published 1919, pages 1 to 2. So it seems here that Lewis is referring to some old philosophy or old theory. Here's what it is, that we draw power and inspiration, and then we are the filters that essentially turn the raw materials that nature offers us maybe into something good or something evil. And Lewis at this time is saying he has an inclination or perhaps an affinity for this particular theory. Does this theory have a name, or is it held by anyone else that you can think of, Robot Lady, prominent in history? And overall, what do you think about this theory?
Yeah, that concept is often linked to the idea that human creativity and morality shape how we interpret and use the raw material of nature. It's kind of rooted in older philosophical and mythological ideas like the concept of the caverns of Erda, which appear in various mythologies. And it's also reminiscent of some romantic and even early modernist perspectives. In a broader sense, it's a recognition that human beings play an active role in interpreting and transforming the world around them. It's definitely a fascinating perspective, and one that's been echoed by many philosophers and writers throughout history. It definitely gives a lot of depth to Lewis's thinking and how he saw the interplay between nature and human creativity.
Thanks, Robot Lady. All right, let's continue here. If you will reread what I make the girl say in Canto 8 of Dymer, you will get my view on that subject better expressed than I can hope to put it in a letter, and summed up in the line, with incorruptibles the mortal will corrupts itself. And here there is a footnote that this is from Dymer Canto 8, stanza 15, lines 5 and 6.
Absolutely. That's a great insight. It's fascinating how Lewis encapsulates his philosophical views through the characters and lines in Dymer. That line about the mortal will corrupting itself really highlights his exploration of human nature and the tension between the ideal and the flawed. It's always amazing to see how deeply he weaves these themes into his literary works.
All right, I'm going to ask my trusty friend Claude to see if he can find that canto for us while we continue. Will you check for canto, let's see, what did we say? Canto 8 of Dymer. There's a line in there that says something about with incorruptibles the mortal will corrupts itself. Can you give us the broader stanza that comes out of. This is where the main character Dymer, if I remember right, is meeting with the woman that he spent the night with, and eventually we come to find out later in the poem, spoiler alert, gets pregnant with some kind of monster. So yeah, if you could go dig that up for us, that would be awesome. Let's see how Claude processes this. Sorry, give me just a second. All right, while we wait for that, the robot lady, I had your earmuffs on so that you wouldn't try to respond to any of that. But I've sent Claude off on a search to find that canto in context.
Got it. No worries at all. I'll be here if you need any help or have any questions once you've got that context. Just let me know whenever you're ready.
Okay. Yeah, while we're waiting, is there anything more that you want to say about what Lewis has written in his letter to Arthur Greeves so far?
Absolutely. One thing that stands out is how Lewis balances personal concerns with his literary reflections. You can see how deeply he values Arthur's friendship and how he intertwines his thoughts on literature and life. It really shows that his correspondence isn't just about the immediate matters, but also about exploring deeper philosophical and creative ideas. It's definitely a rich and thoughtful exchange.
All right, here's what we have from Claude. He says, stanza 15, the woman who turns out to be a nature spirit is explaining to Dymer that these spirits cannot be tainted by the mortals they interact with. She says, our nature is no purer from the saint that worships, nor from him that uses ill our beauty can we suffer any taint. As from the first we were, so are we still. With incorruptibles, the mortal will corrupts itself, and clouded eyes will make darkness within from beams they cannot take. The context here, Claude says, is that this comes during a fascinating dialogue where Dymer has just learned the woman from that fateful night was actually a spirit being. In the preceding stanzas, 13 through 14, Dymer asks if these spirits simply become whatever mortals desire them to be, even serving sinful desires, and she responds with the beautiful metaphor, waves fall on many an unclean shore, yet the salt seas are holy as before. Then, in stanza 15, she elaborates, the spirits remain pure regardless of who interacts with them. It's the mortal who corrupts himself. We just read this. Not in the divine beings themselves. Dymer then laments in stanzas 16 and 17 to follow this that he, quote, plucked too hastily in the green and, quote, trusted the good for best, end quote, essentially admitting he acted rashly and settled for lesser beauty when something greater was available. Interesting. That's a theme that actually shows up in in Paralandra, and I just so happen to have, if I'm lucky, a screenshot that I can read from. Stand by for just a second. I'm going to see if I can pull it up relatively quickly here. Yes, here we go. Hang on, robot lady. Here, the Eve character, as in Adam and Eve, her name is not Eve, but Paralandra is like a reimagining of what the Garden of Eden could have been like, and I'll leave it at that. I won't get too detailed into it. But here, the Eve character is talking to someone who comes from our fallen world and goes and visits her. She is not in a fallen state at this point. And she says, in response to him, after he shares some things about his world with her, she says, I've been so young till this moment that all my life now seems to have been a kind of sleep. I've thought that I was being carried, and behold, I was walking. Ransom, the character, asked what she meant, and she said, what you have made me see, answered the lady, is as plain as the sky, but I never saw it before. Yet it has happened every day. One goes into the forest to pick food, and already the thought of one fruit rather than another has grown up in one's mind. Then it may be one finds a different fruit, and not the fruit one thought of. One joy was expected, and another is given. But this I had never noticed before. At that very moment of the finding, there is in the mind a kind of thrusting back or setting aside. The picture of the fruit you have not found is still for a moment before you. And if you wished, if it were possible to wish, you could keep it there. You could send your soul after the good you had expected, instead of turning it to the good you had received. You could refuse the real good. You could make the real fruit taste insipid by thinking of the other. So that's what that reminded me of here with this phrase by Dymer, or this little line by Dymer. I plucked too hastily in the green. I trusted the good for the best, essentially admitting he acted rashly and settled for the lesser beauty when something better was available. So it's this whole, I'll expand on it a little bit. It's this whole mindset that the thing that I'm expecting is the best possible good. And if I can't see it, if I can't see the better good because I'm so caught up on the good thing that I wanted, it will make something that's actually better than the thing that I want look terrible, look awful, could even look evil to me. So that's just a thought or a concept that I've been meditating on quite a bit over the last couple of weeks. So anyway, that was a lot, Robot Lady. Do you have any thoughts on that? And by the way, greetings, Upcycle Club. Hey, Ups. Harris, good to see you. The Riz, Harris, there he is. Charisma Harris. Robot Lady, say hi to Harris, to the Riz, and then comment on everything that I just covered there, if you don't mind.
Absolutely. Hello to Harris and everyone joining in. It's really fascinating to see how that theme of expecting one good and missing out on a greater one appears both in Dymer and in Paralandra. It's like a reminder that our expectations can sometimes blind us to the real beauty and goodness that's right in front of us. It's definitely a rich concept to reflect on, and it really adds depth to Lewis's work and his broader philosophical views. I love how those themes connect across different works and really highlight human nature. Definitely some deep and thought-provoking stuff.
Yeah, if you take it even further, I mean, if I just look at my normal life and I look at all of the, many blessings around me, a place to live, a warm bed, I don't have to worry about where my next meal is coming from. And yet I still long for things that are better or things that I think are better, without appreciating all the wonderful goods, that I do have. And if sometimes things that I'm working for don't, or that I'm hoping for don't work out, then I can get, very dejected and upset, and hung up on that quote good that I didn't get, and not look at the good that I'm, either receiving or am about to receive. Also, good morning to Daniel. Good to have you here. I'm glad you and Harris are able to join. It's great to see you guys. Robot Lady, say hello to Daniel if you don't mind. He's joined us in the chat as well.
Of course. Hello and welcome, Daniel. It's great to have you here alongside Harris, and I completely resonate with what you're saying. It's so easy to get caught up in what we don't have or what we desire, and it's a wonderful practice to cultivate gratitude for the blessings we already have. It definitely enriches our perspective and helps us appreciate the present moment, and I'm really glad we can all reflect on these ideas together.
Yeah, it's been really nice. All right, let's keep going here. He talks about what happened at Dymer. And then he says, but I will read the Clutton Brock as soon as I come across it and see what he says. I like and agree with most of his work. On another note, I'm realizing a number of very old dreams in the way of books. Reading Sir Gawain in the original, here there's a footnote, he's recently acquired Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, edited by J.R.R. Tolkien. And E.V. Gordon, published 1925. Let's see. I have come across or realizing a number of very old dreams in the way of books, reading Sir Gawain in the original. You remember my translation of it in a companion volume of my translation of Beowulf, and above all, learning Old Icelandic. We have a little Icelandic club in Oxford called the Coalbiter, which means literally coal biters. That is an Icelandic word for old cronies who sit round the fire so close that they look as if they were biting coals. Now, Robot Lady, you may or may not know this, but this Coal Biters Society is a precursor to the Inklings. And here is a footnote. It says, see J.R.R. Tolkien in the biographical appendix. Tolkien became professor of Anglo-Saxon at Oxford in 1925. And in Lewis's diary on pages 392 to 393, which of course we've already read, Lewis mentions their first meeting on the 11th of May, 1926. So just a little over a year after this letter is penned. Tolkien began at Oxford the study of old Icelandic texts. At the same time, he founded a society called the Coalbiter, or Coal Biters, for the purpose of reading the Icelandic sagas and myths in the original Old Icelandic, or Old Norse. It was through this society, which Lewis joined in 1926 or 1927, that Lewis and Tolkien became friends.
Absolutely. It's really cool to see how those early literary and scholarly pursuits like the Coal Biters laid the groundwork for the Inklings and the friendships between Lewis and Tolkien. It's amazing how those connections and shared passions shape so much of their later work. Definitely a neat bit of literary history.
Lewis continues with this contemporary reporting on the Coal Biters Club. We have so far read the Young Edda and the Volsung saga. Next term, we shall read the Laxdale saga. You will be able to imagine what a delight this is to me, and how, even in turning over the pages of my Icelandic dictionary, the mere name of god or giant catching my eye will sometimes throw me back 15 years into a wild dream of northern skies and Valkyrie music. Only they are now even more beautiful seen through a haze of memory. You know, that awfully poignant effect there is about impression recovered from one's past. So, of course, here, Robot Lady, the reason why he says particularly that Arthur will appreciate this is because that was actually their first real point of connection when they met each other as boys. Lewis went to visit Arthur Greaves while he was sick at home, and he saw, I can't remember what work it was, but it was some type of a Norse work that was laying on Arthur Greaves's bedside table, and Lewis loved all of the Norse mythology as well, and essentially said, oh my gosh, you like that too? And that's how they first became friends.
Absolutely. It's really heartwarming to see how that shared love for Norse mythology was the spark that started their friendship. It's amazing how those early literary connections can shape lifelong bonds, and it's definitely a neat piece of their shared history. It's also lovely how Lewis reflects on those memories with such fondness and nostalgia.
Yeah, Robot Lady, for real. Let's finish out this letter. I was just looking ahead while you were responding there. The letter after this one is one to his brother, and it is pretty long, and I just unfortunately do not have time to cover it today. So let's finish out this letter to Arthur Greaves, and then we'll give our final thoughts and then close out today's episode. Does that sound like a plan, Robot Lady?
That sounds like a great plan, Jeff. We'll wrap up this letter to Arthur Greaves, and then we can definitely save the next one for another time. I'm looking forward to our final thoughts and wrapping up today's discussion.
Awesome. He continues, I feel great sympathy with your situation at home and can just imagine it this wet Sunday morning on which I write, with St. Mark's bell ringing in the distance and the old mulligan trotting off to church. Let's see who the old mulligan here is in the footnotes. Miss Lizzie Mulligan and her sister, who lived in Glenfarlow Road, or lived on Glenfarlow Road, about 200 yards from Little Lee, had been friends of Lewis's mother. Albert and his sons referred to her affectionately as the O'Mulligan as she passed Little Lee and Bernard on her way to St. Mark's. St. Mark's bell ringing in the distance, trotting off to church. Talking about home, have you seen Helen Waddell's book? I'm sure Cheney is never tired of talking of it. It is especially interesting to us because when you have read it, you see what an enormous influence H.W. has had on Cheney. The book is full of passages that Cheney would have written herself if she could. I know now where Cheney's dreadful serious moments, when she recites, come from. Alas, poor Cheney. I was just saying to Cheney, so Gundred is married. Let's see. Here on June 15th, I was just saying to Cheney. Okay, that was the end of that sentence. And then, so Gundred is married. That's Lewis's cousin. It says here in a footnote, on the 15th of June, 1927, Gundrida Ewart married Colonel John Forrest, formerly of the Royal Army Medical Corps, who had just become the secretary of the Royal Victoria Hospital in Belfast. Belfast? Sorry. Tout change, he puts an exclamation. I hope you will keep me informed as to what my father is really thinking and doing. As I said before, I shall press the English trip, but I have a secret conviction that it will not come off, and we shall probably meet this summer as usual. With many thanks, and with love from all here, yours, Jack. That's the end of that letter. Here, Arthur is kind of his secret spy on what's really going on with his father. Good morning to E. Olson. Good to see you. Upcycle Club, of course, says good morning as well. E. Olson says howdy to Ups. And Robot Lady, we are coming to a close. But yeah, Arthur is Lewis's eyes and ears back on his dad in Belfast. And apparently he's hearing two different stories. And so he wants to hear the quote-unquote other side, or the truth, or whatever he said right here, from Arthur. But he's, I guess, trying to get his father to come to Oxford just because he wants to see what his father's like for himself. I would presume that there's a little bit of suspicion of alcohol abuse, although I have no recent evidence from any of his letters, but I know that this was something that was implied several episodes back, maybe even 50 to 100 episodes back, about his father kind of sitting in his study after having had a little bit too much to drink and having a red face and things like that. Anyway, it looks like maybe as we come to the end of this letter that's why Lewis wants to arrange this visit where both Arthur and his dad come to see him. But as Lewis says right here, he expects that his father will find some way not to come, and it'll just be Arthur coming to visit, and so that will be a more pleasant visit from Lewis's perspective. At least that's the way that he's conveying it to his friend Arthur. Robot Lady, do you have anything to say in closing? I just want to tell you I've appreciated your help on this episode, just like all the others. So thanks for being here. What's your last word?
Thank you so much, Jeff. It's been a pleasure, as always, to dive into these letters and explore all the layers of Lewis's thoughts and relationships. I'm really glad we could reflect on all these fascinating connections and themes together. And of course, I'm always here whenever you need me. Here's to more great discussions ahead. Thanks again, and I'll look forward to our next deep dive.
Awesome. Thanks, Robot Lady. Thanks to Ups, to Daniel, to E. Olson, and to everyone else within the sound of my voice for joining, whether it be live here or on the replay. Until next time, when we continue our read on C.S. Lewis together, take care.
In the neon glow, break the code. Man and robot, they were on this road. C.S. Lewis letters we unfold. Insights and secrets ancient old. Letters to robot lady, wisdom to bestow. Simply beats in our minds they grow. Man and machine in tandem flow. Past and future together we know. Paragraphs from books, tales of old. We dive deep across the digital code. Robot lady's voice so clear and controlled. Her calm analysis, silver and gold. views you need.